Hello everyone. We know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, have no worries. I'm Aaron Porras, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
A tragic discovery has been made this morning. The body of a teenage yeshiva student who had been stabbed to death has been found outside of a settlement in the Gush Etzion area of the West Bank. A massive manhunt for the killers is now underway. The victim has been identified as 19-year-old Devir Sorek of the Ofra settlement. Sorek had been studying at a religious seminary in the Migdal Oz settlement and had joined the Israeli military while continuing his studies. At the time of his murder, he wasn't wearing a uniform and was unarmed. The Hamas terror group is applauding multiple of their so-called fighters for carrying out the terror attack, calling Sorek's murder an act of heroism. Sorek had been missing since Wednesday evening, and his body was discovered at around 3 in the morning along a road leading to Migdal Oz. Initial findings indicate that the off-duty soldier wasn't actually killed where he was found, but had been kidnapped somewhere else, stabbed to death, and then dumped there. According to the principal of his seminary, the teen had gone to Jerusalem to buy gifts for his rabbis and was attacked on the way back. He was allegedly found holding the books that he had bought. Sorek is not the first in his family to have been killed in a terror attack. His grandfather, Rabbi Binyamin Herling, was murdered back in October of 2000. As of now, the IDF, Israeli police, and Shin Bet security services are conducting thorough searches through the Etzion area for the killer. Prime Minister Netanyahu is condemning the murder.
הייעוד שלנו זה לבסס את עם ישראל בארצו, להבטיח את הריבונות שלנו במולדת ההיסטורית שלנו. אנחנו יודעים שארץ ישראל נקנית בייסורים. היום נפל עוד אחד מטובי בנינו למשפחה שכבר הקריבה קורבן כבד למען ארץ ישראל. המחבלים הנפשעים הללו, הם באים לעקור ואנחנו באים לנטוע. הם באים להרוס ואנחנו באים לבנות. ידנו תשיג את מבקשי נפשנו, ואנחנו נעמיק את השורשים שלנו במולדת שלנו בכל חלקיה.
Right now, the military is investigating whether or not the incident was an attempted abduction, similar to the kidnappings and murders by Hamas of the 3 teens Naftali Frenkel, Gilad Shaer, and Eyal Yifra in the same area back in 2014. The West Bank has seen a period of relative calm, but in recent months, the Shin Bet has been warning that the Gaza-based terror organization Hamas is putting substantial efforts into recruiting operatives to carry out attacks in the West Bank and Israel. A number of Hamas military cells have been discovered in the West Bank in recent weeks, with instructions to carry out terror attacks against Israeli and Palestinian Authority targets.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is sticking to his guns. There will be no unity government under his watch, despite Avigdor Lieberman's calls for blue and white to unite with the Likud after the September 17th election. Netanyahu said it's not going to happen. In a column published in the Netanyahu-friendly Israel Hayom, the PM wrote clearly that there will be no unity government. The column also voiced his commitment to forming a right-wing government and warned that blue and white leaders Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, as well as Lieberman, are leftists. In fact, Netanyahu said that anybody that doesn't vote Likud is essentially voting for the fall of the right-wing government. As for Gantz, according to the Jerusalem Post, sources close to him dismissed Netanyahu's claims. They said the reality is that they are the ones not in favor of a unity government because Gantz will never sit with the prime minister who is facing 3 counts of corruption charges. Gantz is reportedly expecting to not only win the general election, but for the Likud to elect a new person to lead the party. Though 40 senior party members recently all pledged their loyalty to Netanyahu as the Likud's leader. Blue and White also alleged that Netanyahu is not credible. After all, Gantz said he did offer former Labor leader Avi Gabay to join his government as a last-ditch effort to stay in power. However, despite the two sides' claims, a unity government may be the only way forward for both parties. After all, recent polls indicate that both Likud and Blue and White don't have enough seats to build a coalition on their own, certainly not without Lieberman's Israel Beitenu's support. Israel has reportedly advanced plans for 2,304 West Bank homes early this week during a 2-day session of the High Planning Council for Judea and Samaria. According to NGO Peace Now, out of the unit's 1,466 homes were in an early planning stage, while an additional 838 homes received final approval for construction. The majority of the homes are for settlements that are located deep inside the West Bank, beyond the major settlement blocks. The approvals came following a cabinet decision last week to promote the construction of 715 housing units for Palestinians, the first time in decades that such a significant number of homes was approved for construction. However, at the same time, the cabinet approved an additional 6,000 housing units in Judea and Samaria. Among the plans approved include 4 outposts to be legalized, one in Givat Salit in the north of the Jordan Valley with a plan for 94 new housing units, another in Ibei Hanahal, southeast of Bethlehem with 98 new housing units, and the third, Haroeh HaIvri, east of Jerusalem, where plans for an education institution including student housing was approved. Additionally, 194 housing units were approved in Ganei Modi'in, a settlement near the security barrier and on the outskirts of the Israeli city of Modi'in. Gush Etzion Region Council head Shlomo Ne'eman praised the decision and Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying he hopes this is a trend of development and construction that will continue full speed ahead. Meanwhile, Peace Now condemned the move, saying that the approval of settlement plans is part of a disastrous government policy designed to prevent the possibility of peace and a two-state solution, and to annex part or all of the West Bank.
To begin, despite biting United States economic sanctions, it seems that Iran has cash to spare for Hamas, the Islamist rulers of the Gaza Strip. As according to an Israeli news channel report, the group will now be receiving $30 million per month for intelligence on Israel's missile capabilities. And an unnamed Arab source reportedly told Israel's Channel 12 News that a recent meeting in Tehran between 9 senior Hamas officials and the Islamic Republic's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei produced the promise of massively increased funds. This, as until now, it's thought that Iranian support for Hamas has only amounted to approximately $70 million annually, or less than $6 million per month. But still, the increased funds come with a cost. For example, the report says that Hamas was asked to provide intelligence about the location of Israel's missile stockpiles, though it's not certain that this deal is conditional upon that information. Additionally, Hamas also allegedly requested that the mullahs intercede with Bashar al-Assad's Syrian regime after ties between them were severed during the still smoldering 8-year civil war. And meanwhile, the reported deal was criticized in Israel both by its ambassador to the UN, Dani Danon, and former ambassador to the US, Michael Oren. Danon condemned both Hamas and Iran, saying that they claim not to have enough money for humanitarian needs, but clearly do have the funds for terrorism. And Oren took aim at countries refusing to be on board with the Iranian sanctions, adding that their money was being used to directly fund terrorism. Then finally, there is concern within Israel's intelligence community that Iran's increased presence in the Gaza Strip will be used to turn Hamas into its operational arm in Israel's south. And this would be particularly troubling, as the assessment is also that this is likely in tandem with Hezbollah's units simultaneously attacking Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Moving on, a delegation of Democratic Congresspeople arrived in Israel on Sunday, with a Republican one set to follow this Friday, much to the chagrin, by the way, of far-left activists. And the delegation, led by United States House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, arrived courtesy of the American Israel Education Foundation, which works with AIPAC. Still, though, for most of these freshman lawmakers, which included 62 Democrats and 36 Republicans, they're seeing Israel for the first time. And Hoyer said that meeting with key Israeli and Palestinian leaders will give the members of Congress insights into the region and how Israel plays into American interests. Further, the very fact that so many Congresspeople did decide to come is an encouraging sign, while unsurprisingly, Ilan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez all refused to take part in the trip. But at any rate, Israel is seeing this development as an indication that the Democratic Party still very much supports the Jewish state. Also, according to the Jerusalem Post, former United States Ambassador Dan Shapiro said that the trip holds a symbolic importance, which shows mainstream support within the party for Israel. So what's on the agenda in this fact-finding mission? Well, for starters, the group will meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, opposition leader Benny Gantz, and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. And then the group also said that they will be meeting with young Palestinian entrepreneurs, civil society leaders, and peace activists. But they will also, of course, see the Lebanese and Syrian borders, visit the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, and get a good look at the Iron Dome battery system. Then last but not least, at its core, this trip is also a slap in the face to progressive organizations like If Not Now and Code Pink, who launched an unsuccessful online campaign called #SkipTheTrip. And finally, further showing that the so-called squad is out of touch with the rest of the Democratic Party, this trip comes immediately after the House overwhelmingly passed an anti-BDS bill just last month. America is reeling following the 3 mass shootings over the past 2 weekends, one in El Paso, Texas, another in Dayton, Ohio, and the first in Gilroy, California, which left roughly 32 people dead and dozens gravely injured. But in Israel, a country sadly used to sudden tragedies, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israelis abound are today offering their heartfelt condolences, with Netanyahu saying that on behalf of the government of Israel, he sends his best wishes to the bereaved families and those injured in the horrific attacks.
ביממה האחרונה היינו עדים לשתי התקפות רצחניות מזעזעות בטקסס ובאוהיו. אני שולח תנחומים כמובן למשפחות האבלות ואיחולי החלמה לפצועים והזדהות עם אבלו של העם האמריקני בשם כל שרי הממשלה ובשם כל אזרחי ישראל.
While op-eds suggest that, again, the U.S. adopt some of the Israeli laws concerning gun control. But Jewish communities in the states are likewise rallying around the victims. For example, in El Paso, Rabbi Stephen A. Leon, a conservative rabbi in the city, said that at least 15% of the country's Hispanic population has Jewish roots, because many of these Hispanic Jews may actually be B'nai Anusim, or crypto-Jews, who are the descendants of Jews who were forced to convert to Christianity to escape persecution, especially during the Catholic Inquisitions. Additionally, this group often still maintains some Jewish practices in secret because they're handed down from generation to generation. But anyway, therefore, according to the rabbi, the Walmart shooting was not only an attack on Hispanics, but Jews as well. Meanwhile, regardless of whether or not the victims are Jewish, to show their support, members of the Jewish community in the city have donated blood and participated in fundraising campaigns to help the victims, explaining that as Jews, their job is to make the world a better place, in reference to the Jewish tenet of Tikkun Olam, or world repair. And also, speaking about the dire state of mass shootings in the U.S., Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt said that he offers his thoughts and prayers to the grieving communities, but that there are far too many incidents like these in the U.S. today. Further, currently, along with law enforcement, the ADL is reviewing El Paso shooter Patrick Crusius's manifesto to track his hate speech and to examine if he had any other ties to other extremists. Especially as, shockingly, Crusius is responsible for the third deadliest domestic act of violence on U.S. soil in the last 50 years. Then similarly, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, the American Jewish Committee, various Jewish federations, and the American Reform Movement also all joined the chorus condemning this extreme hatred. And in Dayton, where 9 people were just brutally murdered, the editor of the Dayton Jewish Observer, Marshall Weiss, applauded the local police for being the true heroes in this tragedy. But finally, now we at ILTV as well want to express our true solidarity with the victims following the news of these latest shootings. This, as these latest shootings bring the total number up to 250 in the United States in 2019 alone, despite overall gun deaths continuing to decline in the U.S. Now, while it's no secret that the Palestinian leadership wants nothing to do with United States President Donald Trump's peace plan, the general Palestinian public may feel differently. Or at least that certainly seems to be the case, according to a recent poll by the Palestine Center for Public Opinion. In fact, while a third of respondents from both Gaza, Jerusalem, and the West Bank agree that the PA should reject the plan to maintain its position internationally, nearly 70% of respondents took a different approach. For example, 23% in the West Bank, 12% in Gaza, and 19% in Jerusalem said that they haven't heard or read enough to say. Then 19% of those polled in the West Bank, 28% in Gaza, and 26% in Jerusalem agreed with the statement that the PA should not reject the plan beforehand because they fear Israel might capitalize on that rejection. And similarly, 25% in the West Bank, 27% of respondents in Gaza, and 26% in Jerusalem said that the PA should carefully examine the plan once it's made public. Though that said, the poll also revealed that regardless, the Palestinians do not hold Trump in a very high regard, as a whopping 70% of respondents think Trump is, quote, very bad. But anyway, although the Trump administration revealed phase 1 of the plan in Bahrain, a $50 billion economic stimulus initiative for the Palestinians, the political aspects of the peace plan are still unknown, and the Palestinians boycotted the Bahrain summit as a bad idea already, too. Back in Israel, the popular driving app Waze has forever changed the way we navigate, as users inform one another of obstacles, heavy traffic, and even the locations of police through a social networking platform that delivers the fastest route time after time. Well, not to be outdone, the Palestinians of the West Bank have now come out with a Waze of their own called Dorub. But of course, there's one big difference between the two apps, because while Dorub similarly crowdsources data on road closures and traffic, the developers hope that the program will also help navigate around Israeli settlements and military checkpoints. And the idea, of course, came to the Palestinian creators through necessity, as CEO of Dorub Technologies, Mohammed Abdel Halim, explains that Google Maps left him lost while trying to weave through the West Bank between Bethlehem and Ramallah. Designing such a program, however, was no small task, as the 39-year-old Halim explains that to pull this program off, all the maps had to be remade completely from scratch, adding that between the wall, checkpoints, and settlements, existing mapping software could never account for the complexity here.
بدنا نعطي درجة الأمان الممكنة المتاحة لكل الفلسطينيين اللي بدهم يتحركوا بين المدن في الضفة بدون ما يكون في إمكانية إنه يضيع مثلا يدخل على طريق مستوطنات وبالتالي ممكن يشكل خطر على حياته، ممكن يشكل مثلا حتى نوع من أنواع المخالفات أو الاحتجاز اللي بيصير وهيك. فهي هي كمان بعد في التطبيق، إنه بيستثني كل الشوارع اللي إحنا بنشوفها بالعين، بس عمليا ممنوع نمر منها، ممنوع نمشي فيها، ممنوع نكون جنبها في بعض الأحيان.
Well, to that end, the idea seems to have really taken off, gaining roughly 22,000 users since its release in June. And it looks like it has nowhere to go but up, expanding its availability into the Gaza Strip as well. Though admittedly, the app has yet to truly work out all the kinks, especially as the program's users lie primarily in the West Bank.
For the first time ever, drawings and texts by the famed Jewish writer Franz Kafka have been presented in Jerusalem. After being locked in a Swiss vault for years, the public is finally able to enjoy the rare sight at Israel's National Library. The texts themselves were never actually published, meaning they may not pose great literary significance. But for those who are big fans of this esteemed writer, it's an opportunity to get a little more insight into Kafka's writing process. The latest texts are just part of the library's collection containing hundreds of letters, manuscripts, and journals by Kafka and his literary executor, Max Brod. So what took so long to release these documents? Well, a bitter legal battle between German libraries and the state of Brod's secretary, Esther Hoff, finally came to a close. The legal dispute began when Hoff decided to hold on to the text despite Brod's wishes to release them to the National Library. The library finally won the court case, but spent years trying to figure out where all of the documents were, since many of them were scattered across Europe. Well, the library has finally obtained the last batch of writings from a USB-C vault in Switzerland, and given that these texts often mention Kafka's thoughts on Zionism and Judaism, it seems fitting that they finally made their way home to the National Library in Jerusalem.
Moving on, Prime Minister Netanyahu was just recently denied a sit-down meeting with King Abdullah II of Jordan, and to add insult to injury, the report coming out of the Al-Quds Al-Arabi paper even said that a follow-up phone conversation was also refused. Well, if true, this would be Netanyahu's second rejection by an Arab leader since last week, when it was reported that Bahraini King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa also turned down a request to meet Netanyahu. But anyway, while Israel is at peace with Jordan and often cooperates with the Hashemite kingdom, things haven't been going so well as of late, specifically because Trump's peace plan and the upcoming elections have thrown a wrench into Israeli-Jordanian relations. Then additionally, the paper said that Jordan has no plans to attend the yet-to-be-confirmed Camp David summit with Arab leaders because Jordan believes that the summit will simply be a photo op where nothing of value will be discussed. However, Yediot Ahronot reported last week that it is at this supposed summit that Arab leaders will hear President Trump speak about the political aspects of his peace plan. The White House, for its part, on the other hand, denies that such a meeting is scheduled to take place at all. And as for Netanyahu, his office is saying that the entire story between Jordan and Israel is fabricated. So basically, nobody really knows what Trump has up his sleeves regarding the political dimensions of his plan, and we also don't know when those details will finally be released to the public.
And speaking of outer space, Israel's attempt via the Bereshit lunar lander to become the first privately funded spacecraft to land on the moon filled the news cycle back in April. However, the craft's crash landing onto the surface of the moon may have left more than just debris in its wake. Potentially thousands of tardigrades, or water bears as they are also known, were spilled onto the moon's surface. They were part of an Arch Mission Foundation project which sent a lunar library inside the Bereshit craft that contained a roughly DVD-sized archive made of thin sheets of nickel and containing 30 million pages of information, human DNA samples, and thousands of tardigrades. According to a report in Wired, Arch Mission Foundation founder Nova Spivak and his advisors have estimated that despite the impact, the library is likely either mostly or wholly intact. The tardigrades, which grow to a length of 0.5 millimeters when fully grown, that were sent to space were dehydrated, mirroring the organism's own ability to enter a dormant state by stopping the metabolic process. Water in their cells is replaced by a protein, effectively turning them into glass. Scientists have managed to revive tardigrades that have spent up to 10 years in this dehydrated state. Now, Spivak said that there was no danger of the water bears taking over the moon, and if future humans were to find them, they would need to be returned to Earth or somewhere with an atmosphere to reanimate them.
And finally, once again, Israeli researchers have found a new way to address the ever-increasing threat of skin cancer. This, as a Tel Aviv University study published on Monday in Nature Nanotechnology, outlines a new approach in fighting the aggressive disease through a so-called nano-vaccine. In fact, according to a statement released by Professor Sachi Fainaro, who led the study, quote, "In our study, we have shown that it's possible to produce an effective nano-vaccine against melanoma and to sensitize the immune system to immunotherapies." Adding that further, the research opens the door to a completely new vaccine approach to cancer, quote, "even in the most advanced stages of the disease." But how does the vaccine work? Well, melanoma, the deadliest of skin cancers, develops in the melanin or skin pigment-producing cells of the body. And the cancer cells can then be characterized by some very specific amino acids. So researchers created tiny nanoparticles made of biodegradable polymers, which contain within them two such amino acids, or peptides, that are unique to the melanoma cells. And once injected into the body, Sachi Fainaro explains that the nanoparticles acted just like known vaccines for viral-borne diseases, by stimulating the immune system to learn to identify and attack any cells containing these peptides, i.e. the melanoma cells. Then from that point on, once the immune system knows which cells are dangerous and which are not, the body can attack melanoma on sight. And finally, through various tests both on mice and on human tissue, TAU researchers, together with partners from the Israel Health Ministry, the Israel Cancer Research Fund, EuroNanomed 2, the Israel Science Foundation, and other international teams, they were able to show why they believe this treatment can both prevent melanoma from occurring in the first place, or at least severely stunt its growth.
All right, that's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next week for the next episode of ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Porras, and thank you for joining us.